I
Yeah.
don't even like lifting. I was just telling like I would lift it today. I was doing squats and I'm like, I wish I wish I enjoyed this more. If you find your groove and you like something, just lean into that because you're active. You're hopefully you're fit. You're getting all these health benefits. Because if I convince you to do something you don't want to do, you're not going to do it very long. Please lift weights if you can. Like, you don't have to like it because I don't like it.
Yeah.
But again, if you hate it and you love running, run. Awesome.
Hi, everyone. My name is Haley,
And this is Laura.
and welcome to the Body Pod.
Welcome back to the Body Pod, Dr. Bill Campbell. So excited to have you back.
Yes, I'm happy to be back. Thanks for inviting me.
So it has been, I've had you on some of my courses, so I feel like I'm up to date. But as far as a podcast, I've actually never had you on as a podcast. We had Instagram Lives and then I turned those into podcasts, but that's now been, I think, 3 years. So a lot has changed and you've definitely shifted from that time. Obviously, still a master and expert in fat loss and what you've devoted your entire career to. But now, as most women will know you listening to this podcast, you've kind of shifted. Well, you have shifted to include the menopause females and kind of where you are spending some of your research time. So, can you share how long you've been doing, like you've been in the menopause space and providing to all of the research that we know, and including the largest menopause study that you are doing right now?
Yeah, so I think you did a pretty good summary. So I describe myself as a fat loss researcher. That's kind of been my research agenda for most of my career. Also, I have a big muscle component as well. So effectively, my career has been how can we help people lose body fat but maintain as much muscle mass? And probably for the first 15 years of my career, that was focused mostly on younger, metabolically healthy females. And
Mhm.
then over the last probably 2 to 3 years, as you said, I'm not just including, I jumped into the deep end of the pool. I am swimming in menopause fitness. Like the whole lab focus has shifted. Now I'm still using the same skill set, the same building muscle, losing body fat, and looking at just the population is middle-aged women now. And what I love about it is it's it's opened up a whole new world for myself of learning about hormones, specifically estrogen, progesterone, testosterone therapy. And when you're studying young women, those don't really come into play
Mhm.
really at all. So yeah, and then if I were to just be a little more narrowly focused, one thing that I've learned from a lot of conversations from women and then from our survey, there seems to be not everybody, but a lot of women, especially fitness women. So that's another thing. I focus on women who live a fitness oriented lifestyle, and that population is completely ignored in the menopause space. Thousands of studies on menopause, thousands of studies in women. You try to merge fitness and menopause, there is a huge void. So in that space, I've learned anecdotally that a lot of women gain weight, not a lot of weight, but to them it's a lot because they've been fit their whole lives, and they seem to be having a lot of trouble losing it, or the common message is the things I used to do to lose body fat are no longer working. So I'm really focused on that area. So what I'm calling weight loss resistance.
Yeah. So, can you talk about exactly what are the questions that you asked the women in this survey and how many women participated? And where are you in the, are you done with this? Or are you still in the process of it?
So we're done with the survey in terms of it's no longer open for people to respond. So it is the largest menopause fitness survey ever done.
This is so
Um,
exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, I wanna thank you because you helped spread the word, and, right now we're about to submit our first paper from this. There'll be about 6 different papers we're gonna get from this, and let me just explain to everyone what the survey was. So, you had to be a resistance-trained female to participate.
That's what I was gonna ask you. When you say fitness, like fitness focused, does that mean athlete or it's just a woman who trains does resistance training?
Yeah, so I'm very much a resistance training researcher, so I'm staying in that lane. Now, you don't have to lift weights to say that you embrace a fitness lifestyle, but as far as I'm concerned, that's the population that I wanna study.
Would you say active then for listeners just wanting to understand
Yeah,
looking up?
yes. And then specifically to qualify for this survey, they had to be resistance training at least for the last 6 months, on
Okay.
average 2 times per week. And then we had 5 broad domains. One was just, income, ethnicity, like all the basic demographics. Then we had a weight loss body composition and weight loss resistance section. Again, that's where my research is going. So I wanted to, for the first time, I wanted to get this in the research literature because there's nothing about this in the research. A lot of women struggle with this. Then we had a nutrition section. So do you track macros? How much protein? What supplements do you take? We had a fitness section, which was big. So what does your resistance training look like? What does your cardio look like? Do you do agility? Do you do sprint interval training? um, Pilates, yoga. So a lot of questions around fitness. And then also a hormone therapy section as well. So are you on this? Why or why not? What's your dosages? Has it helped? Has it not helped? So that's the survey at large. And we're about to submit the first paper, which is just describing the sample. So pretty, what we call a protocol paper, pretty boring. And then the next one will be the weight loss resistance data. Then we'll move to fitness, then nutrition, then we'll move to hormone therapy, and then the last one, this isn't my area, but I was, working, with a colleague, JC Grease from Boston University. She, convinced us we should look at shame and stigma related, questions because a lot of women are, I mean, I'm very open about, well, yeah, I'm almost inappropriate sometimes about it, but a lot of women have shame or stigma to talk about this, and I'm glad that we did include that because that's, again, that just I didn't never crossed my mind, so we have that data as well.
Wow. I wouldn't have guessed that that would be in it, but I mean, it makes sense. So, what would you say at this point? What are some of what has surprised you? Because
Mhm.
here you've worked with all ages of women, even though most of it was younger. What has carried over that you're like, oh, there's maybe not that much of a change, and what has surprised you in this older audience?
And Haley, do you mean specific to what I've learned as I'm analyzing the survey data or just everything?
I think just everything. What have been like the key moments that maybe you're like, "Oh, I thought it was gonna go this way more, but it
Mm.
Yeah.
didn't."
Yeah, so I'll say more broadly, what surprises me is how many women, and just to give context, and I think you can appreciate this. I communicate with a lot of women just on social media. Like
Mhm. Mhm.
I am a sponge for knowledge. I try to help when I can, or a lot of times I say I don't know what they're if they have specific questions that I don't know the answer to. But my learning curve is really just from a lot of conversations. And now, of course, the survey is going to validate a lot of this, and because these are, this was under research conditions. But the one thing that surprised me, and then if I think about it, maybe it doesn't, but just the how many women are reluctant to even consider hormone therapy. Like, it is not an option. I don't even need to talk about it. And that surprised me because it's like I don't wanna convince anybody they should take hormone therapy,
Yeah.
but at least know why that you're saying that it's not an option. So that's something that surprised me. And I don't think a lot of women, I think they just wanna, maybe tough it out.
Mm.
Um, and for my own wife's situation, we didn't I was we were very ignorant of hormone therapy initially. It took us 1 to 2 years before we made the decision for my wife. So I get being but
Yeah.
but there at least I was like, "Whoa, well, let's educate ourselves. Let's." And just for anybody that is listening, the biggest positive change for my wife was the day she started hormone therapy in terms of her quality of life. It was awesome for her.
Let me tell you, this is when you as you were talking, I had this while there's this kind of I don't know, maybe stigma around taking the HRT and there are women that are like absolutely not. I feel, and I'm kind of shifting gears here, but maybe you include this too. I feel that same stigma with women that are pro GLP-1s and against GLP-1s. Those are the only two, I guess, buckets that I feel like are a hard yes or a hard no. Everything else is kind of like, yeah, I need a resistance train. I can do some cardio. I need to eat protein. None of that is really debatable. But those two subjects are really intense as far as where people align. Has that come up in are you asking that in the study, or is that a separate bucket that you might do later?
No, we definitely asked that specific question, and I will say, from our survey, now we didn't publish any of this yet, but just in my conversations, specifically to women who are having a really hard time losing body weight. Now, let's just define weight loss resistance. The way that I'm defining
Yeah.
it is the things that used to work when I was or when a woman was premenopausal, the weight loss strategies, and those would be reducing calories or increasing exercise, mainly cardio. Doing one or both of those things does not seem to cause as much weight loss as it did years ago prior to menopause transition or prior to menopause. So it's
Mhm.
like the body is weight loss resistant. So with that definition, I would say 80% of the women who I communicate with will say nothing was working, but a GLP-1 finally moved the needle for me, and I'm glad I did it. And then 20% of the women, they had bad side effects or it just didn't work, so they stopped taking it. So that is, again, in my world of living with b body fat loss, that's something that I would always at least put on the table. Again, whether you choose to take it or not, it has helped a lot of women with the extra 10 or 15 pounds that dieting hasn't seemed to help.
Yeah, I would agree with that. When we're looking at that and the research, I guess this is as a whole, maybe for what we just talked about, GLP-1s or just in general, are you seeing a difference in the perimenopause versus the postmenopause?
So, not yet because I haven't
Mm.
necessarily analyzed that data, but I can speak to research on this with body composition changes. The best research studies that have studied this, and I'm going to define what that is. The best studies are those that start tracking women before they started perimenopause. So they're getting them in their early 40s. They're clearly premenopausal, and they track them through perimenopause and into early postmenopause. There's not many studies that have ever done that. There's a handful. So they're the best studies. The next thing we have to know, and now this pool of a few studies gets shorter, gets even shrunk down to even fewer studies. If you're going to study these women and ask what happens during the menopause transition, you have to identify something known as the FMP, and that stands for final menstrual period. That is that is the anchor point for when they are now considered postmenopausal. And the definition of that is they have not had a menstrual cycle for the previous 12 months. So if you don't identify that when tracking these women over time, you have no idea when they were in perimenopause, when they started postmenopause. So the best studies are going to track from pre through peri into post, and they're going to identify the all important FMP, final menstrual period. the studies that or the main study that's done this, the best study, comes from a large database called the SWAN studies. That is the
Mhm.
gold mine of information
Mhm.
if you want to study menopause and the transition through this. What we learned from this data, and we know this because not only did they track them and they had them come every single year for body composition testing, identified FMP, they realized that as women start perimenopause, or let's just say about 2 to 3 years before they're officially postmenopausal, what we see is, we'll look at this through muscle and fat. Body fat is increasing through their 30s and 40s at a given rate. And then when they hit perimenopause, there's an accelerated rate of body fat gain. So perimenopause seems to be the time where some women, again, this research doesn't say it happens to everyone, but majority of the women experience an accelerated rate of fat gain for about 3 to 4 years, starting in perimenopause and extending for about a year to two past postmenopause. And then these body changes start to flatten out. So you don't continually gain excess body fat. One other thing with this, it's not just that they're gaining body fat. There's also an uneven distribution of where this excess body fat is being laid down in the body. And you probably know where that is. It is the abdominal or midsection region. So a lot of other research validates that. So more visceral fat, more subcutaneous abdominal fat during this phase of life. And let's just mention muscle as well. This study did report a slight decrease in muscle at the same time that they had this accelerated rate of fat gain. And it was slight. I still have more studies that I've identified that I haven't read, and I'm at this point, I don't think all studies are reporting a loss of muscle. Now, one caveat to that, all of this research is in what we would all call a general population, right? They're not
Yeah.
you guys, they're not my wife, they're not lifting weights. So, in my conversations with this fit lifting population, is it possible that because they've built more lean mass over the years, that they are indeed losing more muscle than what this other research that there's there's no accounting for building muscle or, lifting weights. And the other thing is all of these changes are occurring at the same time that estrogen levels are starting to go down, and very much so. We're at postmenopause, they're essentially very little estrogen being produced from the ovaries. And we know, or from other research, estrogen appears to be pretty anabolic. So it's to me, it's not a stretch to think if you have built muscle and you are losing estrogen, that maybe you are losing muscle. Now, I hate to keep mentioning my wife, but Haley, I talk about my wife a lot. She lost a lot of muscle uh,
Yeah.
during the menopause. She was like, that was one of she gained body fat, but she was like, man, I can't it bothers me how much muscle I've lost. She lifted since she was a teenager and a lot of work to build it. And then you
Yeah.
lose.
So, are you looking at bone too?
That's an area that I haven't, looked at. Now, I would suggest my population that I love, these resistance trained women, and we can also assume in many cases, well, I have data from our survey that they're eating pretty optimal protein as well. So they're lifting weights, optimal protein or nearly optimal. That's a population where bone loss, unless there's a genetic predisposition, it's not something that we would generally be concerned with, right? Because they're doing all the things to help bone mineral density. Now, I it's not something I've studied, but somebody like my mom who's never lifted weights. So if you are a general population per woman, I would be more concerned about I would be more aware on top of that health marker, but less concerned in this population.
So, can you review the stats of the when you talk about HRT, and you did a post on this recently where 5%, I think, of the what women that are not actively resistance training, what we would just call the average general population of women. Um, the women listening here are most likely resistance training and doing some of these things, but the vast difference in 5% of women that are taking HRT versus 55%, was that the statistic of
Yeah.
women that are active and resistance training and kind of in this world, 55% are taking it. Why?
Yeah, so when you asked earlier, what have I been surprised about? Well, one
Yeah.
was how many women just are anti-hormone therapy, and
Mhm.
maybe they don't know why. And the second thing was exactly what you just mentioned. It was, and this is from our survey, and we did a preliminary analysis on this. So we actually presented this, and it was, yes, like you said, 55% of the respondents of our survey were taking hormone therapy. And we define that as they're taking estrogen and or progesterone. So those two. We also had
Mhm.
questions about testosterone. We also had questions about thyroid hormone. But that question, hormone therapy, it's either estrogen alone, progesterone alone, or a combination. The 5% is based on just norms that have been previously published. I will say, let's just double that. Let's say 10%, because 5% really doesn't account the women who are getting compounded hormone therapy, and we know that
Oh,
that is much higher than probably what the research has reported in past years. So let's double it. So we're still looking at 10% to over 50%. And I didn't know what to expect going into this, but that is a massive difference. Now, again,
massive. It really is.
this is where I get to be the host for a second. Why do you guys think that these women who are embracing a fitness lifestyle, why are they so much more likely to take hormone therapy?
Oh, 100%. I would attribute it to they're probably on social media and they're listening, they're following Mary Claire Haver, Vonda Wright, Kelly Casperson, some of these big leaders in the space that have made it acceptable and quite honestly just educated women on the truth about hormone therapy. You know how long it takes to turn around a ship. I mean, we're still
Mhm.
in
Yeah.
this day and age in 2026 having women every single day be like, "Well, I can't lift, it will make me bulky." And we all know that especially postmenopausal women, I'm like, they're lucky if they can maintain the muscle, let alone build. They for sure can build, but it is so much different than someone that's 25 or even 30 than that postmenopausal 52, 53, whatever that age is. So that's what I would say.
I think also like that result driven mindset. And then you talk to the people around you too. And if the people around you are getting results and seeing this huge change in their lifestyle and quality of life, it, they'll start doing it too. So I think it's like what Haley said, layered on. Yeah, it's like that result driven mindset too.
Yeah, I think that's what you both said is exactly my thinking. And something that I am reminded of at times, again, because I that menopause just comes up in pretty much every conversation I have. We do live, and I forget this, I'll say I do, but I'm gonna say you guys too. We do live in a bubble on our algorithms where we
Mhm.
think, "Of course, yes," and it is not. I was, visiting my parents in Pennsylvania last Christmas, um, and I ran into a girl that I went to school with, and I was she was just, I haven't seen her in a couple years, so I mean, maybe even since high school. So we're both at the gym, and I think she was 48 years old, and that her daughters were with her. I got to meet her daughters, and I was like, "Yeah," like I said, are you up to date on HRT? Like, are you educating yourself?" And she's like, "Oh, what's HRT?" I was like, "Oh, that is an acronym that I just assume that everybody knows that that stands for hormone replacement therapy." So I actually like getting that feedback because it reminds me of this. We are in a bubble, And I know sometimes I'm like, just with my fitness, "Oh, I already said that 20 times." And let me just talk to other people that are fitness coaches. You can't say things enough because you're always gonna reach somebody that maybe didn't hear you before. Or if my wife tells me something 8 times, I don't really hear it the first 7, but I do on the 8th time.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the HIT controversy. Number 1, 2 questions to this. Number 1, let's talk about um the studies that show that sprint interval training is more superior than zone 2 and the pros and cons to that study, maybe, because there's different voices in the space and different takes on the research there. But then separate to that is this interval training spikes cortisol and therefore it shouldn't be done. I don't know where those are coming from because the women that I associate with and collaborate with, we know that cortisol is going to spike when we are exercising. So, but I know there's a whole world out there that's saying don't do any interval training at this age because it will spike cortisol. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on this. One, I was just being a jolly old researcher and came across a study, and then I read a second, then I read a third, and then I was like, "Wow, there is a lot of consistency here about," we'll say sprint interval training. So I dedicated that topic to my research review, did some posts on it, and I'm pretty naive, I guess, but I don't know what was controversial. I don't know if you first of all, um if you don't like doing sprint interval training, don't do sprint interval training, like, nobody's
Yeah.
forcing you to do it. The research, 4 different studies that compared this to zone 2 cardio, all came to the same conclusion. You lose more abdominal and visceral body fat from sprint interval training than you do zone 2 cardio. And some people said, "I can't believe you're bashing zone 2 steady state cardio." I'm like, I don't think I was, like, zone 2 cardio is awesome. If you love that, please do that. Like, I would never tell you to stop doing a form of exercise that you enjoy. So, in terms of the controversy, and again, I got some of that, and I don't know where that comes well, I think I do, um, maybe a little bit, I don't know if we wanna go there. I think maybe there are voices in the space there, people are more focused on a voice rather than the actual topic, I guess is what I would say, which that
Yeah, and would you say that we're putting sprint interval in a separate category? I put a high intensity interval and sprint interval in the same under the same umbrella. However, with these studies, you're saying that the sprint interval is slightly superior to even the hit interval. Or is it
well,
that is all together and zone 2's we know
yeah,
zone 2 is a different animal.
I'm not aware where they compared sprint interval to high intensity interval training. So that's I'm glad you mentioned this. Let's define our terms. So I look at high intensity interval training HIT as a
Mhm.
broad umbrella term that generally means you're exercising very hard for about 30 seconds, and then you're recovering, and then you're gonna go hard again for 30 seconds. I look at sprint interval training as a subset of high intensity where you're actually going harder
Yeah.
for anywhere between maybe 5 to 15 seconds and then recovering and then doing it again. Now, some of the protocols in the studies, the most common protocol was like 8 seconds sprint, 12 seconds relax. Well, that might be a horrible practical application of this, but nonetheless, when they compared that protocol to steady state zone 2, there was significantly more visceral and abdominal fat loss in menopause women. And again, 4 different studies. The studies there weren't major limitations in the studies. They could possibly you could say this whenever somebody says, "Well, they didn't control for nutrition or they didn't track nutrition." Well, they did track nutrition in most of them, but just wasn't the whole study. But if you're gonna make that argument, you have to then say the same thing about every single resistance training study, because that whole field, and I live in this area, they never almost every resistance training study does not track food or not even protein intake in most of these studies. I think that's
Yeah.
not good, but, doesn't mean it doesn't mean that we say, "Hey, if you lift heavy, you're gonna get stronger." So you don't throw out all that literature because they didn't track nutrition. You just say, "Yeah, that's a limitation."
Yeah.
Which again, I'm more than willing to make myself, my own research. Now, I always track nutrition because I'm a nutrition person, but my own research has limitations. And let me also mention one other thing, cortisol. So years ago, and you said this earlier, I just wanna reiterate, when you are exercising, especially high intensity, your body
Mhm.
will naturally release cortisol. That is a healthy, normal response. So when I was younger in my career, I was really into overtraining, um, and overtraining syndrome. And I was studying a lot of biochemistry at the time, trying to find markers of predicting overtraining in athletes. And the only thing that was proposed that was consistent from several different labs was this: the failure of cortisol to rise after exercise. So if cortisol did not go up, that was a marker of early overtraining. So if cortisol didn't go up,
Mm.
Yeah.
that was not a good outcome for those athletes. They quickly became, stale, burned out, overtrained. Now, I'm talking about a natural, acute, within hours of an elevation. You don't wanna walk around for 23 weeks with high cortisol. That's a chronic elevation. That has its own set of issues, but we're not talking about that.
Yeah.
We're talking a normal. So, I I don't I don't know. I don't think there's any research or validity. And a post I made today is when I communicate with women, they say, "Hey, my cortisol's really messing me up." I said, "Well, what are your numbers? Like, yeah, like educate me." "Well, I haven't really had it tested," and that happens a lot. I'm like, "Well, let's
How do you know then?
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, let's not go there." Now, if you have them tested and they're high, okay, then clearly, and I don't wanna discount that something's not right, but, unless you're gonna test that, I don't it's a little premature to just say, "Hey, I have high cortisol."
Yeah.
And
Name.
one other area with this sprint interval training or high intensity, when we age, and this is true of men and women, we lose type 2 muscle fibers, our ability to, and those are the muscle fibers that are the most powerful. They're the ones that give us the most strength when we're lifting.
Yeah.
So that's why one thing, resistance training is awesome. You primarily stimulate these type 2 muscle fibers. But sprint interval or anything that you're doing fast and explosive is keeping these type 2 muscle fibers from getting atrophied. So anything you can do that's powerful as we age, it is really good to do. Now, that doesn't mean, I always say this, you have to do things within your capacity. My mom is 74. I'm not going to have her doing plyometrics and jumping over barriers because she has to get her so no, within her capacity. Now that would look a lot different from her. It might just be her, "Hey, how many toe taps can you do as fast as you can in 30 seconds?" That would be explosive for her. But if you have the ability to do something explosive, do that because you're helping preserve this natural atrophy that aging has on these specific muscle fibers.
And would you say that the explosive, like, let's take a barbell back squat, but you're moving explosive with speed. Is that the same as, like, sprinting on a treadmill for the same amount of for 30 seconds or 20 seconds, a true sprint, a sit exercise on a bike or maybe a treadmill versus moving a bar with speed fast? Same thing or different?
I would say they're different, and I guess this is my training philosophy. I would prefer that I'll just speak for myself. When I lift, I wanna lift for strength and for hypertrophy. When I do conditioning or power training, I wanna do exercises like sprinting on a treadmill. And by the way, a lot of women are going to have joint pain. So this is where this bike, this cycle ergometer, do your sprinting on a cycle ergometer. It is so much better than that pounding on a treadmill. Um, so yeah, I prefer to say, hey, your lifting that is your strength, your strength mode, your building muscle mode. Your sprinting on a bike or treadmill or outside or on an elliptical, like that is your power, explosiveness, speed training. So I think it's better personally. Let's separate the modes and not combine, because then we're getting less out of the resistance training and less out of the power explosiveness training. But if somebody wants to do the barbells, awesome. Athletes do it all the time. It does increase power. It's not a bad thing to do. It's just not my preferred programming philosophy.
So two different options. Do both or do one?
Well, if you could only do one, I would say resistance training, because that's going to prevent the loss of strength, the loss of muscle mass, and you are training these type 2 muscle fibers.
Yeah.
Um, but I would also suggest, if you have the capacity and you don't hate it, do something explosive, whether that's sprint interval training, sprinting on a treadmill. And again, you have to also uh, think, well, what if you're lifting 6 days a week and you're doing 3-mile runs and 2 Pilates classes, and now you're telling me I got to do sprint? No, there needs to be context
Yeah.
and I mean, that's why you're so valuable. Like you you have that context when you work with your community. Like, can't do it all the time either.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where I like your take, Bill, because when we look at it, there's science, but most of us don't live in a lab. And some of these um, research papers that come out, you're like, okay, well, great, but everything was controlled. And then you have real life. And I like the intersection where I think we live in this day and age of evidence overload almost. And so people
Mhm.
are constantly combating what they're hearing, when in reality, if we pull back and just take that person individually and say, okay, does this make sense to you? Is this a level of fitness that you could do these sprints on a treadmill? Or does you've only been walking, so zone 2 is more appropriate, and really pulling apart these absolute claims and understanding if it comes from a research paper or if it's coaching in real life, and really marrying those two together and finding a sweet spot where they're free, women are free to make their own decision based on really here's a bunch of items, tools in the toolbox, which we hear a lot, that can work for you, but you need to decide what is going to be best for you. And if you love this certain you know classes at the gym, that you don't give up everything for the sake of something else, you try to manage something in between.
Yeah, I would add, don't ever give up something that you like because of even if I say, "Oh, I love sprint interval training," which I really don't like it. Um, I
Yeah.
don't even like lifting. I was just telling, like, I would lift it today. I was doing squats, and I'm like, "Ah, I wish I wish I enjoyed this more." When I was younger, I think I did. But if you find your groove and you like something, just lean into that, because 'cause you're active, you're, hopefully you're fit, you're getting all these health benefits. Because if I convince you to do something you don't wanna do, you're not gonna do it very long. Now, that
Yeah.
being said, please lift weights if you can. Like, you don't have to like it, because I don't like it.
Yeah.
But again, if you hate it and you love running, run. Awesome.
Find a balance. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's embrace activity.
Let's embrace activity. So, are there any, let's move on to supplements. So, there, the menopause space has become flooded with a lot of different, I mean, if you start, your algorithm will start favoring, like you said, once you start going down these, following certain people and menopause in general, there are like massive companies that are coming out with all sorts of products. So I was at a conference a couple of months ago, in New York, and I got like this. There was like this powder, this drink mix that was like, this will keep you, like, this has caffeine in it to stimulate you, but it will also decrease cellulite. Come on. And then there was this other like décolleté, like this neck that's supposed to help, I don't even know. But half of these, I'm like, this is why women are confused.
Yeah.
It's all this garbage that's being sold to the menopausal female now, given the amount of money that is in this space. But are there certain supplements that you would say really benefit menopausal women? Number one. And then number two, anything specific for fat loss for women at this age?
Yeah, I'll start by saying you don't need supplements. If you live a fit lifestyle, eat a healthy diet, I won't co and again, I've done a lot of sports nutrition research. I've written 3 textbooks on sports nutrition, but for me to say you absolutely must take X, Y, or Z, no. However, there are some supplements that I think are beneficial, so I'll name the ones,
Yeah.
and I don't even wanna say these are menopause specific, 'cause I take these, but I also encourage middle-aged women to take these. So one would just make sure your protein is at an optimal range, and a lot of people will struggle to do that with whole foods, so a protein supplement is helpful. And by the way, trying to get about 0.75 grams of protein per ideal body weight is a good place to have a goal, and more is not harmful. Creatine, if you are lifting weights, that can help you get stronger, can help build muscle. And now, of course, we know from more recent research there seems to be some cognitive benefits or brain benefits with creatine supplementation.
Mhm.
Another one would be fish oil, to help with, help inflammation, joint pain. It used to be, taken also for cardiovascular health, but there's some more recent research that says, that may have been overplayed. Vitamin D would be another one, and the ones I'm saying are the ones that I personally take. So vitamin D as well. Vitamin D3, if you're looking at you can when you go to the store, sometimes there's D2 and D3, so D3 is a better type to take. Other than those, there might be others that may be beneficial, but those would be like the to me, like the where I would put my first dollars towards and where I do put my first dollars towards.
And what about with fat loss?
Well, caffeine does help with fat loss. That
How
being
much?
um,
How
How
much?
many milligrams?
yeah, I'd say moderately. So caffeine does everything you would want it to do for fat loss, and let's talk about that. Let me actually preface it with this. I don't like using caffeine for fat loss, even though I'm gonna say it's beneficial for fat loss because you're gonna take it every day the rest of your life. So I
Yeah.
prefer to use diet, exercise, maybe consider GLP-1 for those that is a good decision for them and their doctor for them to try that. But caffeine, one, it's a mild appetite suppressant, so it helps you feel less hungry, which will help you eat less food. So very modest, but it does have that capability. It
Uh-huh.
increases your resting metabolic rate. It increases your exercise calorie expenditure. It increases your post-exercise calorie expenditure. It has a nutrient partitioning effect, which means out of the calories you are burning, it shuttles more of the calories being burned from fat than from carbohydrates. And what else? So all of the metabolism, the nutrient partitioning, the reduction in appetite. Yeah, I think now it's not going to melt body fat off of the body. And I'll say this, if I was gonna do a bodybuilding show, I would take caffeine because I would have to get really lean to do that, and I would wanna take every advantage possible. So while caffeine would help and in terms of dosages, it's around, 4 to 5 milligrams per kilogram of body mass, which is blah, 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 science talk. That's around 2 to 400 milligrams for a lot of people, once, possibly twice per day. There's really not a consensus on the amount of caffeine for fat loss. So that's me just reading all of the research and saying, hey, the aggregate is around 4 to
Yeah.
5 milligrams per kilogram of body mass per day.
When you say caffeine, are you talking caffeine supplements or can it be any type of caffeine?
It can be any type.
Sure.
When I have taken caffeine, when I was bodybuilding years ago, I would take pills because I wanted to titrate my exact dosage. So, but yeah, caffeine in any form gives you the same. Taking it with coffee or energy drink, it's not decreasing its effects.
Okay, and besides caffeine, is there another one?
For fat loss, yohimbine is another one. Um, that comes with a lot more of a risk profile, though. If you ever have you ever heard of yohimbine?
No.
No, I love that I have it too. What is it?
Yeah, so yohimbine, it comes from yohimbe bark. That's a tree in maybe northern Africa. Um, you can get it as a bark extract, which I would say don't do that. First of all, I'm not gonna recommend people take it, because it has a little more of a risk profile. I would get if I were going to when I have taken this, again, when I was bodybuilding, yohimbine HCl, so you're getting an exact dosage. And the good thing about yohimbine is it works through a different mechanism than caffeine. There's also research to suggest that yohimbine is better for helping with stubborn fat loss because I don't know how technical we want to get, but it will block alpha adrenergic receptors, which are on fat cells. And when you have normal epinephrine or norepinephrine that bind to these alpha adrenergic receptors that are on fat cells, that blocks the breakdown of fat. So you don't want things binding to these alpha adrenergic receptors. And the way that I remember alpha, I think alpha starts with an A, so A is awful or atrocious. What yohimbine does, it actually blocks the receptors so nothing can bind to it. So that's the caffeine doesn't do that.
Oh,
Yeah, so it's a pretty cool
wow.
mechanism. The side effects though, if you have anxiety, it really amplifies anxiety. It can
Oh, that's
increase
not
blood
good.
pressure. So it's not something that I would ever recommend, but it is a supplement you can get. It's at least in the United States. You just
Huh.
wanna I would definitely start with a low dose. Let me think about other supplements for fat loss.
Well, what do you think about peptides? I would love your thoughts on peptides.
Are we specifically like GLP-1s or
No, I mean
like
ones
BP?
for yeah, like BP
I think it's 147.
575 but the ones like for joints and there's a lot for fat loss as well. So I just wondered what your thoughts were about any of the peptides that people use for health functions.
Yeah, so I'm not very knowledgeable on peptides, so um I don't really have an informed opinion. If somebody were going to say though, hey, let's take peptide XYZ for fat loss, I would say, well, why not a GLP-1, which is a
Mhm.
peptide? Like, let's use the ones that have been more researched. And yeah, there can be side effects, but at least I know what they are,
Yeah.
and I would be confident that the physician I'm working with would be able to work with me. Whereas if it's a newer, untested peptide, I would have that concern. Now, BP157, that is known for helping speed up recovery, so joint issues, soft tissue repair. Um, I'm not aware. I've not taken it. Now I actually had frozen shoulder, probably about 3 years ago, so I would have tried anything, and I would have
Well,
tried that, but eventually it got better. But the people that I talked to about that specific one, so it's not a fat loss. This is
Right.
for joint pain, trying to heal from muscle strains. I've had people tell me, "Oh, I healed so much faster," and I had other people say, "Yeah, I dropped, $2,000 over a couple months, and I'm still it's like it
Yeah, I
wasn't
think it's
at all."
mixed. I took the pill like, I just bought, a pill version, And I don't think it really did anything, but the injection, I think people from who I've interacted with and I've heard that have taken it, people seem to think that the injection maybe, and it probably is from the source. I think I ordered mine on Amazon. I didn't know. I was just like, sure, I'll give this a try. But yeah, I mean, some of these are really pricey and it's kind of a gamble of until more research comes out and we have a bigger picture. But
Yeah.
Bill, how long does it take? Because this kind of shocked me when I heard about it for the first time. How long does it take a study to start, implement, and then get published to where we're all benefiting?
Yeah.
So let's say I have an idea tomorrow for a study I want to do. It will probably be a year before that study is actually done. And then you have to actually write it up, submit it to a journal. They might take them a month to 8 months to give you a decision, to do reviews. So, how long have you and I been talking about menopause? And I still
A few
have yet
years.
yeah, and I have yet to publish a study on it, but the avalanche is coming. Like it is starting this year. They're gonna roll pretty rapidly because a lot of the stuff is just gonna start hitting this year. And we actually are just ready to do a study on weight loss resistance in women who claim that they can't lose body fat or that they struggle with this. So that
Yeah.
one we've been working on for months. I think we're ready to start. And when I do, of course, I'll ask you guys to both share the um,
Yeah.
the recruitment materials. So, but yeah, I would say about a year is a good. So, um, now our survey study didn't take that long, but we had so much data because thank you for sharing it. We had over 4,000. So that's a lot of data that I
Yeah.
have to read over and we're doing something called a thematic analysis. And my research coordinator, Anna Oleman, she coordinated that study and did a really good job. So she's the one doing most of the work, and she just tells me what to do, and I'm like, all right, I'll do this.
Yeah. I love it. It's interesting. I mean, and I know that a lot of research is coming. I know that Stacy Sims is has partnered with a lot of companies that are doing a bunch of research. You're doing some. I know a lot of people have jumped on board, a lot of researchers and companies. And I interviewed Kelly Casperson on my last group that I ran, and she was like, listen, we can wait a few years for these studies to come out, or with what we have, what do you think works for you as far as HRT? Or what do you think works for you as far as sprint interval training or whatever it is? You know, as the data comes out, it's still nice to say, sure, some things change, but a lot of it is going to also always come back to the individual at hand and what works for them. And that's important. Again, I think that the research is great. Sometimes it makes it more confusing because on the World Wide Web, you can get access to everything. And then it's this pool of information where you're like, well, I thought this was true. I thought this was true. And really, I always try to come back with my groups to the basic foundations are always going to be the basic foundations. Good nutrition, resistance training, some cardio. I mean, like the basic things like that aren't ever at this point going, we're not going to have a pill to maybe make us not do anything, like on the Wally show, the Wally
Yeah.
ship, where we just have to take a pill and like we don't have to do anything. So I think that there's power in that as well, even if we don't have all of this data or the data that we have may be leading us some way. Most of the time, what would be your advice for women that are until, not waiting for these studies to maybe come to fruition to get them on board with whatever?
Yeah, I think my advice would be to follow someone that you trust that has that maybe isn't selling their own line of crappy supplements.
Yeah.
Um, So you mentioned some like Kelly Casperson, Vonda Wright, Stacey Sims, like people that you can trust and try not to try to keep the noise out. So that's I think that would be my advice. Like, cause it's you start getting a lot of voices and they start to contradict each other. So that's what I say. Just find people that seem to be ethical, trustworthy.
Mhm.
Um, and like Kelly, I've only met her once, so we don't really know each other that well, but she's been doing you can see videos of her doing her thing from like 15 years ago when
Oh, yeah.
3 people were watching what she was saying. And
Yeah.
now, like, I'm very happy, like, she's getting she's getting what she deserves, like, she's getting a big audience and she talk
Mhm.
about passion. That's
Yeah.
so, yeah, yeah, somebody like her, and again, I don't think she claims to be a fitness expert, but in terms of a lot of the health parameters, she's awesome.
Yeah. Well, Bill, I say this every time. I'm going to say it again for all of the new people listening. It's so refreshing to have a male in the space that is, as you've been called, the gentleman of the fitness industry. You're good to the core. You have good values. You're just a good soul. And I've always appreciated that about you, which is why I always want to keep in touch and bringing you on these to help my audience because it really is you're a solid person. So thank you for being such a good person and a good soul. And I know when you say it that it's coming from your heart and you aren't trying to just sell. I don't even know what you would sell, but like one thing or another. As a
Education.
researcher,
I
education.
sell education.
Yeah, we're all selling education. So, Bill, how can women find you? And is there anything that you're excited about that you can share with us that maybe we haven't talked about that's coming in the future?
So people can find me, the best place is on my Instagram, and that is Bill Campbell PhD. I do have a product if anybody wants to go to my website, it's billcampbellphd.com, and I have a research review where I summarize the latest and best fat loss and muscle building research. You have been an expert multiple times. Thank you for doing that. And what I'm excited about is this upcoming weight loss resistance study that we're doing. So
Yeah.
we will a lot of women, not everybody. So don't if you're 45 and not in menopause, don't think that it's going to be a horrible experience. It might not be. But other women do gain weight and then they claim they have a hard time losing it. So we want to test that. And we're going to need women that are in perimenopause or early postmenopause. And we
Mhm.
need younger women because that's going to be our control group. So I'm excited about starting that study, and I'll soon be recruiting for that in the next probably in the next few weeks.
Oh, great. Well,
That is
we
so
will help.
exciting.
We will help spread the word. Thank you so much, Bill, again. And you know where to find him now. Thank you for all that you're doing in the female space.
Yes, thanks for having me on again.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
If you enjoyed this episode, please consider giving us a 5-star rating and sharing the Body Pod with your friends.